Now to make this honeydew melon wine, I'll be using the following. I have 3 honeydew melons, weight about 13.5 pounds. I have 4 cups of sugar. I'll be using a handful of raisins. I'll be using the juice of a quarter of a lemon. This time around, I'll be using a Red Star Premier Blanc wine yeast. No particular reason, high ABV content potential. But again, as I like to say, if you don't have that, this still works. Speaking of bread yeast, we're going to need about half a teaspoon of bread yeast, which is going to act as our yeast nutrient. I'll be using 1 black tea bag, which is going to act as our tannin substitute, which once again is going to provide a little bit of astringency to our wine. I'm going to be using a couple of straining bags. Now, straining bags are optional if you don't mind punching down your wine twice a day for the next week. But if you've got straining bags, that kind of makes it a little bit easier. I'll need a gallon of clean filtered water. We'll need a wide mouth container or fermenter, something that we can get our straining bags and or fruit into. Later on, for the long haul, we'll need a secondary fermenter, which is jug, carboy, demijohn, take your pick. Again, in this particular case, I'm using a recycled apple juice jug. Now, because we have to have a means by which we can let CO2 escape and keep the bugs from getting in, we'll need an airlock with bung. I'm going to be using an 8-quart pot. Now, primarily I use an 8-quart pot to kill off any wild yeast or some degree harmful bacteria that might be present on the fruit. But in this particular case, since honeydew melons won't break down as easily as most other fruits, I'm going to be using this to also help soften the fruit just a bit. It would be helpful, although not essential, to have a hydrometer with testing tube. Again, the hydrometer is used to help us determine our starting sugar levels, and then again at the end, our ending sugar levels, so that we can perform a calculation to help determine how much alcohol we have produced. And as I like to say, last but certainly not least, we need a means of sanitizing and cleaning our equipment to make sure that no harmful bacteria ruins our wine. So whether you're using One Step or Star Sands, that is going to be more or less an essential. You can find links to most of these items in my description and comment sections. I am an Amazon affiliate. I am a Brewdeming affiliate, just to let you know. But apart from that, this is all I need to start the process of making this honeydew melon wine. All right, first thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and slice up our melons. Following that, we want to go ahead and scoop out the seeds. All right. I'm going to go ahead and segment our melon half. I'll do it this way for the sake of brevity, trying to be as careful as possible so that you're slicing only the melon and not your fingers. And next thing I want to do is to go ahead and separate the goodness from the edge, trying to be as careful as possible. And following that, I want to go ahead and chop these up, or better yet, to mince these melons pieces up. Some nice small little pieces. And following that, I want to get those into straining bag. And the reason why I'm chopping these up extra small is that I found out that the melon doesn't really break down as much during primary fermentation, where a lot of fruits and other sorted vegetables, roots, herbs, flowers, or whatever, it tend to remain a little bit firm. And with that having been done, I'll just go ahead and repeat the process. All right, tie this off. Ended up using 3 1-gallon straining bags. All right. Now then, let's move on to the next step. All right, let's start getting our water to boil. Let's go pour in roughly half of our water. No need to be precise. And we'll hang on to the rest of that because we'll probably end up using some of that later. Let's go ahead and turn the heat on. And let's bring that up to a boil. All right, now that our water has come to a good rolling boil, let's do a couple of things. One, let's go ahead and add in our half teaspoon of bread yeast, which is going to act as our yeast nutrient. Next thing we want to do is go ahead and add in our 4 cups of sugar. Let's go ahead and incorporate that. Next thing I want to do, let's go ahead and drop in our fruit. Let's go ahead and get those down on there. Again, the hot water, boiling water in this case, is used primarily to kill off any stray yeast that might have settled on the fruit. To some degree, kill off any harmful bacteria. And thirdly, to help soften the fruit just a bit to help it release more juice. All that having been done, let's take our teabag, which is our tannin substitute. Go ahead and drop that in. And let's incorporate it a little bit. Put a lid back on, turn our heat off, and let's let that come down to room temperature. Now that our mixture has had a chance to come down to room temperature, I just let it set out overnight. I'm going to go ahead and begin transferring the juice from our pot to our fermenter. Before I do that, I want to remove these temporarily straining bags because I want to be able to measure out a good 1 gallon without the volume of the bags throwing off the measurement. Let it drain a little bit, not trying to be overly precise. And using my freshly sanitized spoon, may as well fish out the tea bag. It has served its purpose. It is no longer needed. Decide. All right, now begins the fun part. And using the water we had left over from in my case, yesterday, I can go ahead and bring it up to the level that I want it, which is basically about here. Huh. Well, that took the whole gallon. All right, with that having been done, we can go ahead and add in our straining bags. And there's no point in wasting any potential wine to be. Let's go ahead and add that to the mix. And for a moment, let's go ahead and put our lid back on. Now then, I want to roughly chop my handful of raisins, sultanas for some of you people who refuse to call them what we call them, raisins. And I just want to give them a rough chop. Help to raisins to release some of our flavor all that much more easily. Get back here. I mean, yeah, it is a handful, but I did weigh these out for anybody who's looking to be a bit more precise. That came in at 1.5 ounces or 42 grams. There you go. And since I've got the cutting board out, I might just as well go ahead and get our lemon prepped. Again, lemon is acting as an acid blend substitute, provide a little acidity or brightness to our wine. All I need is a quarter. And I can just go ahead and add these to the mix. And with our lemon, since I don't really want to get any seeds in there, using my freshly sanitized strainer here, let's go ahead and give that a squeeze. And that's all I need to do. For the moment, put the lid back on. Now, I'm using my freshly sanitized spoon. I want to go ahead and give that a good little stir. Good vigorous stir if possible. All right, lay it back on for a moment because I want to take a hydrometer reading. Okay, looks like my initial hydrometer reading is coming in at 1.058, and that's a little bit lower than where I would like to have it as 1.080. And I think what I'm going to do is give it a quarter cup more sugar to give the yeast a bit more sugar to work with, to convert that into a bit more alcohol at the back end. And I'll take another reading and see where I stand. Okay, that quarter of a cup extra gave me a hydrometer reading of 1.060. It's heading in the right direction. I think what I'm going to do is add in a half a cup of additional sugar and see where that brings me. Okay, after adding in that extra half a cup of sugar, it brings my hydrometer reading up to 1.074, which is close enough. I'll let it go at that. Again, the addition of sugar was not to hopefully have some residual sweetness at the end of the process. I expect the wine to go dry, which means no sugar whatsoever. At which point, when I'm ready to do the bottling process, I'll go ahead and back sweeten it and follow those steps that I normally use for bottling. Now, to begin the process of actually turning our juice into wine, we need to add in our yeast. Now, again, I'm using a Red Star Premier Blanc wine yeast, but again, if you don't have it, don't worry about it because this still works. So I'm going to go ahead and try to sprinkle that in there best you can. Put a lid back on and kind of give it a slight little swirl because of those straining bags. But basically, that's it. What's going to happen is that over the next few hours, the yeast is going to expand and start to come alive and start consuming all of the sugars and oxygen in the juice, converting that into alcohol and CO2. Now, with CO2, you have to have a means of releasing the CO2 in whatever container you're using, and that's where the airlock comes in. This particular fermenter does have its own built-in airlock, which is the little red dot here. As air is released, it raises up. And that's what we're going to be doing as far as adding the yeast. Now then, let's label our wine with a few particulars. All right, we're making a Honeydew Melon wine. We started it on this date, and our original gravity, or starting gravity, was 1.074. Now for the next several weeks, we want to put this wine away somewhere out of direct sunlight and basically let it do its thing. We're going to keep the fruit in there for a week, 7 days, and then we're going to take those bags out, squeeze out as much residual juice as there might be still within, and then we'll go ahead and rack it or transfer it from this fermenter into a secondary fermenter that we showed earlier at the beginning. And then we'll let things sit in there for the next several weeks. And by several weeks, I mean 6 to 8 to 10. And then if necessary, we'll rack it again. And usually that's enough, letting that sit for about a 12-month period total from the beginning of this process to the end before we bottle it. And if necessary, in fact, that whole process you can find in our winemaking operations playlist on my channel page. And that's going to consist of, again, the periodic rackings. Then we're going to do a back sweetening, degassing. Then we're going to bottle it. We're going to pasteurize it. We're going to cork it, label it. 12 months hence, after we've done that, at the 1-year mark, we're going to go ahead and do a taste testing. So until then, there we go. This is my take on doing a Honeydew Melon wine. See you in 12 months. Okay, it's been 13 months since I started making this Honeydew Melon wine. Missed the 12-month mark that I usually try for because, well, I just didn't feel like doing it. Life got in the way, especially with Christmas coming up. So these have been sitting on my dining room table for the past month, and I want them gone. So let's get to it. Let's see, born 12/11/2023. ABV came in at 10.76%. It was back sweetened and it was pasteurized. All right. The wine itself came pretty clear. I mean, it's okay. It's not bad. For those of you who are into that sort of thing. Don't really know what else to say except that let's just get right to it while I'm still in the mood of doing my last batch of wine for the channel. Let's pop the cork. Here we go. All right. I do seem to remember, even though it's been sitting in the bottle for the past month, that while back sweetening it, I'll just get right to it. There's no point in drawing this out. All right. Was it worth the wait? Let's find out. Trying to taste the honeydew. I remember what I was about to say before I decided to move on. I do remember after back sweetening it that it had a bit more flavor. And I should have added a bit more sugar. That was the only two things that I can actually say about this wine. Doesn't really have doesn't really have a whole lot of honeydew flavor or aroma. In fact, I'd have to say it tastes a little bit thin in terms of flavor and aroma. Um, 10.76%. Hmm. I mean, what does this remind me of? Chardonnay? No. Chenin Blanc? Pretty close. More of a Sauvignon Blanc. If I had to put it in those types of terms, I mean, it's not bad. I mean, it's because it's got a because the flavor is a bit on the thin side. Again, it's got a nice crisp taste to it. Just doesn't have that honeydew flavor that you really would think that it would have. Now, I do seem to recall in the making of this video, there was let's just say, a technical fault while I was putting juice into the cardboard. Um, in other words, if you rewind the video, you'll see that I accidentally left the spigot on, and off camera, I had to add some more fruit to make up for what got lost down the drain. However, even that having been said, for it to have lost as much flavor, well, it wasn't much. It was like, I would say about two-thirds of a cup to a cup of the original must that didn't quite make it. But this is one that um, I could probably say that I wouldn't mind adding another teaspoon-ish, yeah, another teaspoon of sugar into the bottle, which is perfectly fine because that's where I learned the whole concept of back sweetening. I thought if you buy a bottle of wine, what you get is what you got in terms of sweetness. You just have to work your way through finding one that kind of suits your palate. No one ever told me that if it's not sweet, you can go ahead and add sugar and call it a day. Not gonna worry about restarting fermentation. It's just gonna add more sugar, make it sweeter. Um, but yeah, that's about all I'm really gonna say about this honeydew melon wine. I mean, I'm not gonna dump it. I'm gonna drink it when I want something that's kind of light and refreshing, with low ABV or alcohol by volume. For those who don't know, um, I mean it's okay. Would I make it again? Probably not. I mean, it's not bad to the point where I'm not going to make it again because it just ended up as a bad tasting wine. It's just that when I pick up a bottle of wine and it says honeydew melon, I'm expecting to see or taste a lot more of the honeydew melon that I'm not quite getting here. That being said, that's all I'm going to say for that. Uh, I've got today is the what is today? Today is the 13th of January. I've got about 3.5 weeks, and I will probably try and do a wrap-up video. Not having anything planned, more than likely I'll just simply get in front of a camera and ad-lib, like I always do when I wrap things up. But until then, I will see you in the next video.